你就是霍勋是不是？
啊，是的。
就是在出入大道买车那
You're
个
the
是不
car
是？
seller he Shun, right?
Yes.
Good. We've been looking for you for days and couldn't find you. Were you trying to dodge us on purpose? Do you know who I am? Doesn't matter if you don't. After today, you'll know. You know what family planning is. That's what they used to call it.
Oh,
How old are you now?
33. Here, have a cigarette, sir.
Don't play games with me. 33? And you're still not married?
I don't want to get married. I'm enjoying being on my own.
Enjoying being on your own? I'm not here to tell you to get married, but you must have a kid. Do you have a girlfriend? Maybe a few more on the side? Couldn't you have a few kids? This is a serious requirement.
Well, I'll tell you straight, I can't do it.
Don't try to argue with me. If you don't start having kids, it's on you. Do you realize that? You'll be the one history blames. There aren't enough kids in kindergartens, not enough students in elementary schools, and the streets are empty. You're responsible for this, you know that?
如果你是一直不生小孩的话，结果我跟你说，你爸爸、你妈妈他们读书。
This video has recently gone viral across major platforms in China. Although it seems like a comedic skit, the fact is that the Chinese Communist Party has started setting up birth encouragement offices nationwide. These offices are essentially repurposed from the former family planning offices, now tasked with pressuring people to have children. One person commented, 30 years ago it was the family planning office. 30 years later, it's the birth encouragement office. They control your uterus. If they say no kids, then no kids. If they say have kids, you must have kids. The CCP's policies just keep flipping back and forth like a pancake. Recently, numerous people have taken to social media to complain. Some report that right after registering their marriage, neighborhood committees started calling them to encourage them to have children. Others say the community called just 3 days after their wedding to ask if they were pregnant. Someone's sister, who had just had their second child, received a call urging her to have a third. Even pregnant women are regularly contacted, with calls checking in to ask if they intend to keep the baby. These frequent phone calls and even home visits have left people feeling frustrated. This is just outrageous. Now, if we're not having children, the neighborhood committee is already calling to pressure us. Some of my friends have been receiving these calls recently. They immediately ask, when was your last period? Sometimes they even text. They're asking if you're capable of getting pregnant. Talk about suffocating. Why are they in such a rush? I looked up the birth rate data, and it all made sense. The numbers are grim. Our population growth has been negative for 2 years in a row, with a total fertility rate around 1. What does this mean? It's the second lowest among major global economies. Luckily, South Korea is behind us, or we'd be last. A user on Xiaohongshu posted, "This is insane. I got a call in the afternoon from the village's family planning office asking when I plan to have a second child. Given the current situation, raising even one child is a challenge, let alone two. I remember when my family had an extra child growing up. The family planning officials came and tore down our roof. My parents didn't come home for 2 or 3 years to avoid them. And now they're pushing for a second kid? I'm speechless." Another person shared, "My community called me early in the morning to ask if I'm pregnant. They said my child is almost 2 and I should start planning for another. They even offered free folic acid from the community office. It feels like this birth pressure is right in my face." Some commented, "Since getting married, the community has already called me 6 times, all to ask if I'm pregnant, twice a month." One person asked, "Is my uterus some sort of public property now?" Another person commented, "How ironic. Before the 1990s, these family planning offices were like gangs, storming into homes to arrest pregnant women and threatening to demolish houses. Now they're calling to check on us. They even come to our door asking if we're pregnant and if we're using any birth control. It's truly absurd." A community worker also shared, "I'm one of those tasked with making these calls. I don't want to do it. It feels intrusive. But as soon as they set up these new information cards, they pass them to the district office. And now those of us in family planning have to make these calls." Another person revealed that as soon as you undergo a marriage checkup or a free pre-pregnancy check, the community starts calling. Once you fill out personal and family details, you're marked as a woman of childbearing age in the system. It seems that, much like in the days of strict family planning, these women of childbearing age are once again being closely monitored by authorities. The CCP has now elevated this birth encouragement effort to a priority. After all, family planning was once a matter of national policy. Living in an authoritarian state like China means even basic reproductive rights are constantly disregarded. Many people expressed frustration. They said the same people who once dragged women out of homes and tore off roofs are now asking us to have more children. Just a few years ago, they were calling, insisting we get IUDs. and wouldn't let us register newborns without them. The community's control has gone too far. First, they prevented us from having children. Now they're pushing us to have them. The flip-flop of the family planning policy is one of the most surreal things in China over the past 30 or 40 years. And I'll stick to being the last generation. One person even asked, I'm the second child in my family, and my family was fined for having me. Will the state reimburse me for that penalty? Another added, back in 2004, my aunt lost her teaching job for having a second child. What about that? A user remarked that during the one-child policy, the rewards for parents of only one children were laughable, just 5 or 10 yuan a month. Now, they want to raise the birth rate through pressure and coercion. The pressure is especially intense for those born in the 1980s, who are now the main targets of these birth campaigns. Back then, family planning was strict, and many were extra children that parents struggled to keep. Now they're being pressured to have kids themselves, a truly ironic twist. It's no wonder there's a popular saying online, when I was young, they told me I was an extra child. Now they want me to have extra children.
In the future, not having kids might lead to fines. There's this department called the Family Planning Office. 30 years ago, when I was born, they came to my house, took our things, and threatened to tear down our home. They pushed my father to pay a fine, saying they'd detain him if he didn't. We had no choice but to scrape together the money. It was only a few hundred yuan, but back then that could buy a 300-pound pig. And now? I hear the Family Planning Office has been renamed the Birth Encouragement Office. People who reach 30 and aren't married or have only one child might face fines. If you're over 30, unmarried, or childless, they might even take you away for re-education through labor.
As the video mentioned earlier, the CCP now considers young people who choose not to have kids as sinners for all eternity. This isn't just talk. There are real measures being taken.
If you don't have kids, let me tell you, the consequences are now in the system, on your record. You understand that?
Look at the times we're in. Taxis are driverless. Factories are run by robots. What future would this kid have? Will you support them?
That's not my concern. I'm just enforcing policy. After you have a kid, can't you go back to the countryside and plant corn? There's plenty of land. You can grow corn, potatoes. No one's starving.
That's not possible.
Not possible? If you don't comply, by tomorrow, we'll take out your stove, your couch, your fridge, even your home. This isn't a joke.
Some people commented, it's fine, I still don't want to get married, let alone have kids. I'd rather pay fines or face whatever penalty, even death if it comes to that. I'm struggling to survive as it is. Another remarked, if having kids is society's responsibility, then society should take care of them. If it's a personal choice, then society should respect that. All we hear are calls for sacrifice, never for reward. If my personal struggles are of no concern to the collective, then why should the collective success or failure matter to me? Young people now see things clearly. One commenter put it well. A person's sense of collective pride depends on whether they're respected within that collective. It's not selfish, it's just the truth. China's sharp population decline isn't solely because young people don't want kids. It's largely the result of the CCP's decades-long family planning policies backfiring. Yet, instead of reflecting, the authorities blame young people for lacking responsibility, essentially shifting the blame and dodging accountability. In 2023, Zhao Baige, the deputy director of China's National Health Commission, told the People's Daily, "We never enforced family planning through coercion, but guided citizens voluntarily through education, economic means, and legal regulations." Her statement immediately sparked outrage. Many felt it misrepresented history, even rewriting it. Those who lived through it know family planning was enforced through harsh and coercive measures, leading to countless family tragedies. I saw the family planning era firsthand. My family was part of what they called the overquota guerrilla squad with 4 kids. These enforcers came to our house and took everything that could be sold, the TV, the pig, even the chickens that laid eggs. My mother, who was pregnant, had to hide. She moved from place to place like a guerrilla fighter. We siblings had to borrow money for school fees, and when we couldn't, my eldest sister dropped out because we were so poor. Those were truly unbearable days. The negative effects of China's family planning policies are now coming to light. In recent years, the workforce has sharply declined, and an aging society is arriving sooner than expected. The CCP has rolled out various pro-birth policies, but they've had little impact. CCP has intensified these efforts. According to the CCP's official news agency Xinhua, on October 28th, the General Office of China State Council issued measures for accelerating the birth rate. This includes introducing concepts around marriage and childbearing to elementary, middle, and even college students, prompting sarcastic comments that they're starting the baby-making agenda with children. The document claims to guide population development under Xi Jinping's new era of socialism with Chinese characteristics, and proposes support measures across 4 areas. The first is to strengthen birth support services, including enhancing maternity insurance, improving parental leave, and covering some assisted reproduction services under health insurance. The second measure involves expanding childcare services. The third proposes support education, housing, and employment, such as housing benefits to encourage families to have more children. The fourth measure, widely criticized, aims to create a birth-friendly societal environment, promoting positive news on marriage, family, and childbearing, as well as increasing population awareness through social education, which will be integrated into school curricula. Meanwhile, various regions have introduced specific incentives, such as a reward for 2,000 yuan for a second child and 5,000 for a third. However, people have mocked these amounts, saying, "What can 5,000 yuan even buy? It's barely enough for a few cans of formula. The small amount won't inspire anyone to have more kids. It lacks sincerity." One user commented, "If the government offered 200,000 yuan per child, plus a monthly 10,000 yuan allowance, free healthcare and education, along with reliable childcare, I'd have one immediately. It's hard enough to support myself, let alone more kids." Others suggested, instead of pressuring people, why not implement real benefits? Just reallocate some of the system's retirement funds to mothers of 3 kids. No need for all these convoluted policies. Pressuring people won't help. If there were actual money on the table, wouldn't people pick it up? And according to tradition, you need connections for any real benefit. Some have urged, no matter how much they push, don't give in. If pigs don't breed, it's the pig farmers who worry, not the pigs.
If pigs don't have piglets, it's not the pigs who worry, it's the farmers and the feed sellers.
Do you think the government's heavy push for pro-birth policies, opening up second and third child options, will work?
Not really. How much can they offer? Some cities give 700 yuan a month for 3 years, totaling 20,000 yuan. But what can 20,000 yuan really do? It's not just a simple market transaction. There's so much more involved.
The Chinese government has actually been rolling out birth subsidies for some time. In 2022, 17 departments jointly issued a document promoting various incentives for having a third child, with regional governments following up with red envelopes to encourage births. Yet, these measures have had little impact. The lack of success isn't just because the subsidies are low. The main issue lies in the implementation of these policies. Many promises remain unfulfilled, and it often feels as if the government is just misleading people. Zhengzhou's policy of optimizing births officially started on September 1st last year. It promised real financial support, including a one-time childcare subsidy of 2,000 yuan for the first child, 5,000 yuan for the second, and 15,000 yuan for the third and additional children born in Zhengzhou. However, many citizens reported issues when trying to claim these benefits. No one took responsibility. The promised childcare leave and extended maternity leave policies also remain unimplemented. A resident told Radio Free Asia, "They haven't actually followed through. I've been waiting to apply these subsidies they claim are available, but I never received a single penny. The policy is nothing more than a way to mislead people. It's just their usual tactic." Recently, as regions across China issued statements to encourage births, this Henan case has resurfaced, sparking heated discussions online. Some comments include, "You really believed it? They won't give you money after the baby's born. What can you do, return the kid? They might as well promise 500,000 yuan. Talking big isn't taxed, after all." Others sarcastically added, "Given the choice between distributing subsidies and just issuing statements, they opted for issuing statements." Another user pointed out, "They promised childcare subsidies that haven't materialized. If this isn't false advertising, what is? If an ordinary citizen complains, they face jail time, but the CCP freely deceives the public." A Zhengzhou resident commented, "It's been a year since they announced the third child subsidy, and there's still no payment." A Beijing resident shared, "This is like the current policies in Beijing. Lots of good news, but you never see the funds or the department actually implementing them." One comment hit the mark. "They've set up subsidy rules but haven't figured out where the money will come from." This issue isn't limited to Henan. Recently, a user shared an even more absurd case from Hubei. A friend of his in Hubei province, who has 3 children, applied for a subsidy. However, because his second pregnancy resulted in twins, the local government ruled that he didn't meet the 3-child standard. Then, he had a 4th child, which technically made it a 3rd pregnancy, but when he reapplied, the authorities still denied it, saying he didn't have the right number of children. In short, it's impossible to get the CCP to pay up. Some people have raised the question, why is the government pushing for a 2nd and even 3rd child? The reason is that most new birth rates in China now come from families who already have children. Data shows that when the 2-child policy was implemented in 2016, newborns reached almost 18 million, with second children making up 45.5%. In 2017, the total number of newborns slightly increased, but second-child births increased by 1.6 million, surpassing 50% of total births. This trend means that families with only 1 child are declining, and most new births rely on families having a second child. In the following years, the overall birth rate continued to decline, but second-child births remained above 50% of all births. This indicates that families with children are carrying the burden of boosting the birth rate, while many young people truly don't want kids. Why are young people today reluctant to have children? Some women fear the physical risks of childbirth and the impact on aging. But the main reason is financial. They simply can't afford to raise a child. China's so-called supportive birth policies are mostly superficial, and young women still frequently lose their jobs for having children. With a stagnant economy, high youth unemployment, and waves of company closures, layoffs, and pay cuts, it's challenging enough for young people to survive, let alone take on the responsibility of a family. Furthermore, many young people don't want children because they don't want to get married, mainly due to the pressures associated with marriage, expensive dowries, housing costs, and the financial demands of family life. This pressure to have kids is ultimately futile.
Here we go again, with brilliant experts coming up with ideas to encourage people over 40 to have a 3rd child. So now they're focusing on those born in the 70s and 80s. And the reward is a whopping 5,000 yuan. Honestly, you won't get a penny out of the post-2000 generation. They're squeezing every bit they can from those born in the 70s and 80s. These experts sure are something else.
That's why the new birth encouragement offices are now mainly targeting people born in the 1980s and 70s. One person commented, "They're joking. 5,000 yuan. People in their 40s and 50s are considered high-risk pregnancies. That money barely covers a couple of prenatal checkups, let alone all the other issues that come with it. Do these experts really not understand why people aren't having kids? I don't believe it. The real solution lies in making people wealthier and society fairer." Another pointed out, those who can afford to have 2nd or 3rd children don't need a few thousand yuan. It's just a bonus for them. But for those struggling to raise even 1 child, 1,000 couple isn't enough to make a difference. So let's be rational. Don't risk financial ruin over a mere 1,000 or 2,000 yuan. Another highlighted the root of the issue. Animals don't reproduce when their environment is too harsh. It's the same for people. This blogger said it best.
Recently, there's been a slew of new policies encouraging people to have kids. But no one's taking it seriously. It's like they've tried CPR, defibrillators, adrenaline shots, and even a ventilator. But they're still not letting go of the hand squeezing our throats. What's the point?
Everyone knows the real reasons young people aren't having kids. As one commenter pointed out, these so-called incentives only address the symptoms, not the root cause. Under the current system, where basic human rights aren't even guaranteed, why would anyone want to have children only for them to endure the same hardships?